A father's ID hits the marble floor, $5 billion, 0 cents, vanishes in 60 seconds. James Patterson adjusts his worn work jacket as he pushes through the heavy glass doors of First National Bank's downtown flagship branch. At 68, his weathered hands tell the story of 4 decades building something from nothing. But today, he looks like any other retiree in simple clothes and comfortable shoes. The contrast strikes him immediately. Crystal chandeliers casting light across marble floors, mahogany counters polished to mirror shine, and the soft murmur of wealth changing hands. Rick Morrison glances up from his computer screen, his practiced eye immediately cataloging the elderly black man approaching the teller area. Rick's expression shifts almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression that speaks volumes about assumptions made in split seconds. James notices the look but says nothing, simply joins the line behind a woman in designer heels discussing her European vacation plans. "Next customer," calls the teller, and James steps forward with a business check folded carefully in his shirt pocket. The amount, $2,800,000, 0 cents, represents just another day's revenue for Patterson Industries, but James treats every transaction with the same methodical care that built his company from a $500, 0 cents VA loan. Rick's attention sharpens when he overhears the amount. Something's wrong here. His 20-year banking career has taught him to spot irregularities, and everything about this situation screams fraud. An elderly man in work clothes trying to deposit millions? Rick approaches the teller station with the confidence of someone about to save his bank from a costly mistake. "Excuse me, sir," Rick interrupts, his voice carrying just enough volume to draw attention. "That's quite a large transaction. We'll need to verify some details before processing." James turns calmly, meeting Rick's gaze with eyes that have seen Vietnam battlefields and corporate boardrooms with equal composure. "Of course. What do you need?" "Let's start with identification and the source of these funds. This seems unusual for someone in your situation." Rick's choice of words lands like a slap. The implication hangs in the air. Someone like you doesn't handle money like this. The conversation ripples outward in concentric circles of discomfort. Other customers shift nervously, sensing the tension without understanding its source. James produces his driver's license and business documents with practiced patience. He's been here before, in different forms, across decades of building Patterson Industries. Rick examines the ID with theatrical skepticism, holding it up to the light as if checking for forgeries. "Patterson Industries. And you claim to be the owner?" "I am the founder and chairman emeritus, yes." James's voice remains level, but something shifts in his posture. He's cataloging every word, every witness, every detail with the precision of someone building a case. "What would you do if someone disrespected your father like this?" Rick's fingers dance across his keyboard with exaggerated reluctance, expecting the system to flag the transaction as fraudulent. When the account information populates, $47 million, 0 cents current balance, decades of transaction history, Rick's confidence wavers for exactly 3 seconds before pride takes over. Well, the computer shows something, but systems can be hacked these days. We'll need additional verification before we can process anything this large. James reaches into his briefcase and produces Patterson Industries Incorporation papers, tax returns showing 8-figure annual revenues, and a letter of credit. Each document is authentic, professional, undeniable. Rick finds new objections with each piece of evidence. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify these documents. We have other customers waiting." Rick gestures toward the growing line, making James's presence an inconvenience rather than legitimate business. James complies without argument, moving to a marble pillar where he can observe the entire banking floor. His calm acceptance confuses Rick, who expected anger or frustration. Instead, James watches everything. The dismissive glances from staff, the way conversations pause when other customers notice the commotion. Marcus, the young security guard, approaches cautiously. At 24, He's studying criminal justice at night while working security during the day. His instincts tell him something's wrong with this confrontation, but management hierarchy demands loyalty. Just a routine verification, Rick calls out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Sometimes people try to use fraudulent checks, and we have to be careful. The implication that James is attempting fraud spreads through the banking floor. James observes the reaction of other customers. Some look away in embarrassment. Others whisper among themselves, phones discreetly recording. A well-dressed woman shakes her head and walks out, disgusted by what she's witnessing. Noticing, "Sir, I'm going to need to see that identification again." James approaches Rick's desk and places his driver's license on the polished surface. Rick picks it up, pretends to examine it more carefully, then lets it slip from his fingers. The plastic card skitters across the marble floor, sliding past a startled customer's expensive shoes before coming to rest near the lobby's fountain. "Oops. Maybe keep better track of your documents," Rick says with a smirk. The silence that follows is deafening. Every customer within sight stops what they're doing. The elderly man who spoke to Marcus earlier pulls out his phone and starts recording. Even the tellers stop processing transactions to stare at the ID lying on the floor like discarded trash. James bends slowly, his 68-year-old knees protesting, and retrieves his identification. The image burns itself into the memory of everyone watching. An elderly man on his hands and knees in a bank, humiliated for trying to conduct legitimate business. When he stands, his eyes find Rick's face with laser focus. "What's your full name, son?" Rick straightens, chest puffed with authority. "Richard Morrison, Senior Vice President, Commercial Banking Division." "And your supervisor?" "Sandra Williams, Director of Commercial Banking." "Why? Planning to file a complaint?" Rick's laughter draws chuckles from two colleagues who've gathered to watch. James nods thoughtfully, filing away every detail. "I'm sure we'll speak again, Mr. Morrison." He turns toward the exit, then pauses. "Oh, and Marcus? This isn't your fault, son. You're just doing your job." The kindness toward Marcus, while being systematically humiliated, reveals James's character more clearly than any resume. But James doesn't react the way anyone expects. Outside the bank, James sits in his modest Toyota Camry, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from controlled fury. He calls his son Michael, CEO of Patterson Industries. "Michael, it's Dad. The deposit went fine." The lie comes easily because this isn't about money anymore. It's about principle. "Great. Any issues with the new account setup?" "Nothing we can't handle. I'll update you later." James ends the call before his son can ask follow-up questions. This is personal now. His second call goes to Rebecca Chen, Patterson Industries corporate attorney. "Rebecca, I need you to research someone. Richard Morrison at First National Bank. I want everything: employment history, social media profiles, previous complaints." "Your dad? What happened?" "Research first, questions later. Document everything you find with timestamps and screenshots. This needs to be litigation-quality documentation." James's third call goes to David Kim, Patterson Industries CFO. "David, I need a complete analysis of our financial relationships. Every bank we work with, every account we maintain, every line of credit." "James, that's going to take some time. Are we changing our banking strategy?" "Potentially a major change. How much business do we do with First National specifically?" David's fingers fly across his keyboard. "We maintain 3 accounts totaling $8,200,000, 0 cents in deposits. They're also the lead bank on our equipment financing, about $12 million, 0 cents in outstanding loans, and they've been courting us for the municipal infrastructure project financing. The $5,200,000,000, 0 cents project? That's the one. Sandra Williams has called me 6 times this month trying to schedule a presentation meeting." James pauses, processing the irony. Rick Morrison just humiliated the man whose company represents the biggest potential deal in First National's history. "Schedule that meeting, David. But I want Rick Morrison specifically assigned to handle our account." "James, are you sure?" "I'm sure. Tell them we want to work with Morrison directly. Make it a condition of the meeting. Back inside the bank, Rick basks in the afterglow of his confrontation victory. He recounts the story to colleagues with embellished details, mimicking James bending to retrieve his ID. The performance draws laughs from junior staff who mistake cruelty for authority. "You should have seen his face when I dropped the ID," Rick tells a group at the coffee station. "Some people need to learn their place." Marcus overhears the conversation and feels his stomach turn. He remembers James's kind words and gentle demeanor, contrasting sharply with Rick's cruel recreation of events. That evening, Rebecca begins her research into Rick Morrison's background. Social media profiles reveal expensive vacation photos and subtle but clear bias patterns in his posting history. His LinkedIn shows rapid advancement through 3 banks in 12 years, but careful reading reveals gaps that suggest his departures weren't entirely voluntary. She discovers Rick's employment file contains 3 previous discrimination complaints, all quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. The pattern is clear. Rick has a history of treating minority customers differently. Meanwhile, James drives to Patterson Industries headquarters, a sprawling complex housing 2,000 employees. The parking lot tells its own story. Vehicles ranging from luxury cars to modest sedans, representing the economic diversity of people who found opportunity within James's vision. Employees greet him warmly as Mr. James, a title that reflects both respect and affection. In his son's office, family photographs line the walls. Images of James in military uniform from Vietnam, where he earned a Bronze Star. Pictures from the early days of Patterson Industries, awards from decades of community service. "Dad, you look troubled," Michael observes. "Are you sure everything went okay at the bank?" "Sometimes people show you who they really are, son. The question is what you do with that information." Rebecca works late into the night, building a comprehensive profile of Rick Morrison and First National Bank. By midnight, she has a 40-page report detailing Rick's pattern of discriminatory behavior and the bank's inadequate response to previous complaints. James discovers something about First National that makes his plan even more powerful. Rebecca's preliminary report arrives in James's email at 6:47 a.m. and the contents exceed his expectations. Rick Morrison isn't just a biased employee. He's a liability that First National has been ignoring for years. More importantly, the bank's aggressive pursuit of Patterson Industries' business creates the perfect opportunity for strategic response. James reads every page twice, absorbing details that will shape his approach. Rick has a documented pattern of treating minority customers with suspicion. 3 previous complaints resulted in quiet settlements totaling $140,000, 0 cents, suggesting the bank values Rick's performance more than customer dignity. The morning brings a call from Sandra Williams herself. "Mr. Patterson, this is Sandra Williams from First National Bank. I understand you're interested in discussing the municipal infrastructure project?" "Miss Williams, yes. My CFO mentioned you've been trying to arrange a meeting." "Absolutely. When would be convenient for you?" James pauses strategically. "I appreciate your interest, Ms. Williams. However, I had a brief interaction with one of your commercial banking officers yesterday, Richard Morrison. He made quite an impression. I'd like him to handle our account personally." Sandra's enthusiasm peaks. Rick is her star performer. "Mr. Patterson, I couldn't be more pleased. Rick is one of our rising stars." "I'm sure we will. Can we schedule a meeting for next week?" "Absolutely. I'll have Rick coordinate the details directly with your office." The call energizes Sandra. Patterson Industries represents the kind of relationship that defines careers. She immediately briefs Rick on the opportunity, emphasizing the deal's importance. "Rick, this is career-defining stuff. Patterson Industries is exactly the kind of client we need. Mr. Patterson specifically requested you, which shows he recognizes talent." Rick glows with pride, having no idea he's walking into a trap. His memory of yesterday's confrontation has already been sanitized by ego. He handled a potential fraud situation professionally. David Kim receives Rick's call with professional courtesy, scheduling the meeting for Thursday afternoon. Rick's voice carries confident authority as he describes Patterson Industries as exactly the kind of client First National serves best. "We'll have 5 attendees," David informs him. "Our CEO, Michael Patterson, our legal counsel, Rebecca Chen, myself as CFO, and 2 senior vice presidents. Oh, and Mr. James Patterson likes to observe major business meetings. He's our founder and chairman emeritus." Rick processes the information without making connections. The name James Patterson registers as vaguely familiar, but he doesn't associate it with yesterday's incident. Meanwhile, James continues building his case with methodical precision. He contacts Marcus through First National's main number. "Marcus, this is James Patterson. We met yesterday during an unfortunate situation with Mr. Morrison." Marcus remembers immediately. "Mr. Patterson, I'm really sorry about what happened." "Marcus, you handled yourself professionally. I'm not calling to complain about you. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to provide a written statement about what you witnessed." Marcus agrees reluctantly, knowing his job could be at risk, but unable to ignore his conscience. His statement provides a security officer's detailed observation of the entire incident. James also receives calls from 3 customers who witnessed the confrontation. Each caller provides contact information and agrees to provide written statements if needed. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in professional settings? Share your story below. Wednesday evening, James meets with his senior staff to discuss the First National situation, without revealing personal details. "We're evaluating our banking relationships," he tells the group. "The companies we partner with reflect our values. Character matters as much as competitive rates." Michael senses undercurrents he doesn't understand, but trusts his father's judgment. Rebecca knows exactly what's happening, but respects James's decision to handle the confrontation personally. "Dad, you're being unusually mysterious about this banking thing," Michael observes after the meeting. "Some lessons are more powerful when people discover them naturally, son. Tomorrow's meeting will be educational for everyone involved." The day of the meeting arrives, and Rick has no idea what's about to hit him. Thursday morning dawns with unseasonable clarity. Rick Morrison arrives at First National Bank 30 minutes early, his best suit pressed and his confidence soaring. Today represents the culmination of his career ambitions, landing the biggest client in the bank's history. Sandra Williams briefs him one final time. "Rick, I cannot overstate the importance of this meeting. Patterson Industries represents everything we want in a client." "Sandra, you know my track record. I don't lose clients, I acquire them." Rick's self-assurance fills the room. At 1:45 p.m., First National's receptionist calls Rick's extension. "Mr. Morrison, the Patterson Industries team has arrived." Rick walks to the executive conference room with swagger. Through the glass walls, he sees 5 impeccably dressed professionals. Expensive suits, confident body language, the kind of clientele that validates Rick's career choices. Michael Patterson stands to greet Rick with a firm handshake. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for meeting with us. I'm Michael Patterson, CEO. Rebecca Chen introduces herself as corporate counsel. David Kim explains his role as CFO. "Where should my father sit?" Michael asks casually. "He likes to observe our major business meetings." Rick gestures toward the conference room's corner. "Wherever he's comfortable." His attention remains fixed on the executives, the people who make decisions and sign contracts. "Dad founded Patterson Industries 42 years ago," Michael continues. "Built it from nothing after serving in Vietnam." The conference room door opens, and James Patterson enters wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Rick glances up from his presentation materials and freezes as recognition hits like a physical blow. The elderly black man from yesterday's confrontation stands in the doorway, transformed from humble customer to corporate patriarch. Rick's mouth goes dry as the full scope of his mistake becomes clear. "Mr. Morrison," James says calmly, settling into a chair. "We meet again. Michael looks between his father and Rick, sensing tension he doesn't understand. Rebecca recognizes the dynamic immediately. James has orchestrated this entire meeting as a strategic confrontation. Sandra Williams enters with enthusiasm radiating from every gesture. "Mr. Patterson, it's an honor to meet Patterson Industries leadership," Michael responds graciously. "Actually, it was my father's suggestion that we specifically request Mr. Morrison handle our account. He made quite an impression during their previous interaction." Rick's composure crumbles completely. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the conference room's comfortable temperature. Every word from yesterday's confrontation echoes in his memory. "Mr. Morrison and I had an interesting conversation last week," James adds. "He certainly demonstrated First National's approach to customer service." Sandra senses something wrong but can't identify the source of tension. Rick attempts to speak, but his voice cracks. We should..." James opens his briefcase with theatrical precision, removing a folder labeled Due Diligence First National Bank. The sight of organized documentation sends panic racing through Rick's nervous system. "Before Patterson Industries commits to any financial partnership," James begins, "we conduct thorough research on institutional culture and values." James opens his briefcase and pulls out a folder that makes Rick's worst fears come true. James places the folder on the conference table with the precision of a lawyer presenting evidence. "Mr. Morrison," James begins with devastating calm, "would you like to explain to your supervisor what occurred during our last interaction?" Sandra Williams looks between the two men, confusion evident. Rick manages, "There was a small misunderstanding." James opens his folder with deliberate pace. Inside are printed screenshots of security footage, time-stamped and labeled. "Mr. Morrison questioned the legitimacy of Patterson Industries' business check and suggested I might be committing fraud." Michael's face hardens as understanding dawns. Rebecca takes detailed notes, recognizing the legal implications. "Furthermore," James continues, "when I provided proper identification, Mr. Morrison deliberately knocked it from my hand." He produces a photograph showing his driver's license lying near the lobby fountain. Sandra Williams feels her stomach drop as she realizes the magnitude of Rick's error. Rick attempts damage control. "Mr. Patterson, I was following security protocols." James removes a second document. "First National Bank's actual customer service policies." "Which specific protocol required you to drop my ID on the floor?" The question hangs in the air. Rick has no answer, because no policy justifies his behavior. Rebecca recognizes the systematic destruction of Rick's credibility. David Kim reviews the folder's contents with professional fascination. Charts showing Rick's previous discrimination complaints, analysis of First National's diversity statistics, screenshots revealing Rick's bias toward minority customers. "Over the past week," James continues, "Patterson Industries has received calls from 3 customers who witnessed Mr. Morrison's behavior. They were sufficiently disturbed to document their observations." Sandra realizes the situation extends beyond Rick's employment. First National's reputation is at stake. Michael speaks for the first time since understanding the situation's scope. "Mr. Morrison, do you stand behind your treatment of my father?" Rick attempts one final defense. "I was protecting the bank from potential fraud." James removes a final document, the deposit slip showing $2,800,000 0 cents for Patterson Industries, LLC. "Mr. Morrison, you questioned our company's legitimacy while we were attempting to deposit nearly $3 million. Our account balance that day was $47 million 0 cents. The numbers hit Sandra like physical blows. Rick didn't just humiliate a customer. He attacked the credibility of a man whose company represents more wealth than most banks see in a year. Sandra attempts damage control. "Mr. Patterson, if there was a misunderstanding, we're committed to resolving it." "Ms. Williams," James responds, "this wasn't a misunderstanding. Your employee deliberately humiliated me, because he assumed I didn't belong in your bank. Michael stands to gather materials. We'll be terminating this meeting. Our legal team will review options for addressing Mr. Morrison's conduct. Rick attempts one last desperate apology. James looks at Rick with the patience of someone who's already won every battle that matters. Mr. Morrison, you saw an elderly black man and assumed I was nobody. Your bias cost your employer hundreds of millions of dollars and destroyed your own career. Was maintaining your prejudice worth it? James delivers the words that will end Rick's career forever. James stands slowly, commanding absolute attention. Mr. Morrison, you asked my full name last week. I'm James Patterson, founder and chairman emeritus of Patterson Industries. We employ 2,000 people, maintain contracts with 12 government agencies, and generate $400 million 0 cents annually. Rick's face drains of all color as the full scope of his catastrophic error becomes clear. Sandra Williams feels physically sick, calculating the financial implications. Over 42 years, I've built relationships with every major bank in this region, James continues. Your colleagues at City National, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America have been calling me personally, hoping to earn our business. Michael adds with controlled fury. You humiliated a Vietnam veteran, a Bronze Star recipient, and the founder of one of this region's largest private companies because you didn't like how he looked. James raises his hand to quiet his son. Michael, I wanted to handle this myself. Mr. Morrison made assumptions about my worth based on my appearance. Rebecca produces a second folder labeled Patterson Industries Banking Relationships. Inside are detailed financial statements showing the company's dealings with 17 different banks, representing over $200 million 0 cents in maintained balances. Mr. Morrison, James continues, I founded this company with $500, 0 cents, and a VA loan in 1983. Built it through respect, integrity, and treating every person with dignity. Values your institution clearly doesn't share. Sandra realizes Patterson Industries isn't just a potential client. They're a regional economic powerhouse. Ms. Williams, James addresses her directly. This isn't about special treatment for me. It's about how your institution treats all customers, particularly those who don't look like your typical client. James opens Rebecca's folder to reveal research on First National's community investment record and previous discrimination settlements. Your bank has a documented pattern of these incidents. 3 lawsuits settled quietly in the past 5 years. David provides the financial impact analysis. Patterson Industries was prepared to move all 17 business accounts to First National, representing $200 million 0 cents in maintained balances. Mr. Morrison's actions have eliminated your competitive advantage. Sandra attempts to salvage something. Mr. Patterson? If there's anything First National can do, Ms. Williams, James interrupts. Mr. Morrison, question my legitimacy while I was bringing your bank the largest deal in its history. He suggested I was a criminal while I was about to make your institution wealthy. Rick finally grasps the complete destruction of his career. Michael speaks with controlled rage. You humiliated my father in front of other customers, dropped his identification on the floor like garbage, and called security to remove him for conducting legitimate business. James turns to Rick with the patience of someone delivering a final lesson. Mr. Morrison, I've spoken with your board of directors. 3 members know me personally. They're very interested in your behavior and your institution's response. James delivers his final ultimatum that will reshape the entire bank. James presents his final terms with precision. First National has a choice. You can terminate Mr. Morrison immediately and implement comprehensive institutional changes, or Patterson Industries will ensure this incident becomes public knowledge throughout the business community. Sandra realizes she has no leverage. Rick's termination is inevitable, but James wants systemic change rather than individual punishment. Furthermore, James continues, we'll be documenting our experience for the Municipal Infrastructure Committee, the Regional Banking Association, and the Better Business Bureau. Rick understands the complete scope of his professional destruction Michael speaks for the first time during James's ultimatum. Dad, what do you want to happen here? James responds with the wisdom of someone who spent 4 decades building rather than destroying. Justice, son. Not revenge. Justice. James outlines his specific requirements. Mr. Morrison's immediate termination with cause. Mandatory diversity training for all customer-facing staff. A formal apology to customers who witnessed this incident. A $100,000 0-cents donation to minority business development programs. Sandra recognizes these demands represent the only possibility of containing the damage. Additionally, James continues, Marcus, your security guard, will receive a commendation for his professionalism during a difficult situation. Rick attempts one final plea. Mr. Patterson, I made a mistake. I've learned from this experience. James looks at Rick with patience. Mr. Morrison, some mistakes reveal character rather than create learning opportunities. You didn't accidentally drop my ID. You chose to humiliate me because you enjoyed exercising power over someone you considered inferior. Sandra agrees to every demand. Rick is escorted out by the same security team he called on James. The Patterson Industries team leaves together. In the elevator, Michael asks, Dad, why didn't you tell me immediately? I would have ended their business relationship that same day. James responds as the elevator descends. Son, some battles you fight yourself. This was about more than business. It was about dignity, respect, and ensuring other customers never experience what I did. But James's plan has one more devastating revelation that will end Rick's career forever. 3 days after Rick Morrison's termination, Rebecca Chen releases a comprehensive legal report documenting Rick's pattern of discriminatory behavior. The 47-page document details not just Rick's behavior, but the corporate culture that enabled it. The report reveals Sandra Williams had received written complaints about Rick's treatment of minority customers on 3 occasions. Each complaint was dismissed with verbal warnings. The documentation shows institutional tolerance for discriminatory behavior. First National's board implements emergency changes. Rick's termination becomes the catalyst for wholesale restructuring of customer service policies and management oversight procedures. The municipal infrastructure contract is awarded to City National Bank, with explicit reference to institutional culture concerns. The $85 million 0 cents in fees that First National anticipated becomes City National's competitive advantage. Patterson Industries publicly announces their new banking relationship with City National, praising their commitment to treating all customers with dignity and respect. Industry professionals immediately understand the implied criticism. Local business journals pick up the story. 3 major corporations follow Patterson Industries to City National within 2 weeks, citing concerns about First National's corporate culture. Rick's LinkedIn profile goes inactive. His professional references stop returning calls. 2 scheduled job interviews are canceled when background checks reveal his termination for cause. The $100,000 0 cents donation goes to the Regional Minority Business Development Fund. James joins the fund's advisory board and ensures the money creates lasting impact. Marcus receives his commendation and an offer to join Patterson Industries' corporate security team. He accepts, using his criminal justice education in a positive environment. Rebecca's legal analysis becomes required reading in diversity training programs. 3 former First National customers contact James directly, sharing similar experiences with discriminatory treatment. Sandra Williams announces her early retirement, accepting a severance package that avoids more damaging termination proceedings. First National's stock price drops 2.8%, as investors express concerns about risk management. 6 months later, Rick makes one final attempt at redemption that reveals his true character. 6 months after his termination, Rick Morrison sits across from James Patterson in a coffee shop near Patterson Industries headquarters. The meeting wasn't Rick's idea. James requested it after Rick applied for a position at Community Trust Bank. Rick's appearance has changed dramatically. His expensive suits have been replaced by off-the-rack clothing. The confident swagger has been replaced by genuine humility born from consequences that destroyed his professional reputation. "Mr. Patterson," Rick begins, "I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to thank you for agreeing to meet with me." James studies Rick's demeanor. This isn't the same man who dropped his identification 6 months ago. Unemployment and social isolation have either broken Rick's spirit or forced genuine self-reflection. "Mr. Morrison, when Community Trust Bank called for a reference check, I could have ended your prospects with a single phone call. Instead, I requested this meeting because I wanted to understand whether you learned from what happened." Rick accepts the challenge without defensive posturing. "Sir, I've spent every day since my termination understanding the damage I caused, not just to you personally, but to every customer who witnessed my behavior." The response surprises James with its specificity and apparent sincerity. Rick isn't offering generic apologies or deflecting responsibility. "I've been volunteering with the Regional Minority Business Development Fund," Rick continues, "helping entrepreneurs understand banking procedures. It's opened my eyes to the barriers I created through assumptions and bias I didn't even recognize." James verifies Rick's claims through questions that probe the depth of his community involvement. Rick's answers demonstrate genuine engagement with minority business owners, understanding of their challenges, and recognition of how banking culture perpetuates discrimination. "Mr. Morrison, Community Trust Bank serves communities that have historically been underserved by major financial institutions. Why should they risk their reputation by employing someone with your history?" Rick doesn't attempt to minimize his past actions. "Mr. Patterson, I can't change what I did or undo the harm I caused, but I can commit to being better than I was, to using my experience to help other banking professionals recognize and address their own biases." James recognizes something in Rick's response that resembles the accountability he's tried to instill in Patterson Industries employees. Rick isn't asking for erasure of his mistakes. He's accepting responsibility while demonstrating change through action. "Mr. Morrison, I'm going to give Community Trust Bank a qualified recommendation. You'll be hired with a 1-year probation period, mandatory mentorship, and quarterly progress meetings with me." Rick's eyes fill with tears of relief and gratitude. "Mr. Patterson, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet," James responds. "Community Trust Bank serves customers who've been failed by institutions like First National. Your job will be helping them access capital with dignity and respect. If you revert to your previous behavior, I'll personally ensure you never work in banking again." The arrangement becomes a model for rehabilitative accountability rather than permanent exile. James calls Community Trust Bank's president with his recommendation, structuring Rick's employment around mentorship and community engagement. Michael learns about the meeting during their weekly dinner. "Dad, after what he put you through, why help him find another job?" James considers the question. "Son, justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about giving people the chance to become better than they were. Rick's behavior was unacceptable, but destroying him permanently doesn't create the systemic change we need." James's final action creates lasting change that touches thousands of lives. 2 years after Rick Morrison dropped James Patterson's identification on First National Bank's marble floor, the ripple effects have transformed the regional banking industry in ways no one could have anticipated. James's measured response to discrimination has created a framework for accountability and reform that extends far beyond individual punishment. It was with shock that James Patterson responded. The Regional Banking Association unanimously adopts Patterson Protocols, comprehensive customer service standards that emphasize dignity and respect, regardless of customer appearance. 47 member institutions implement these protocols, reducing discrimination complaints by 73% in the first year. Patterson Industries' Dignity in Business Scholarship Program reaches its 2nd anniversary, having awarded $1,200,000 to 127 minority students pursuing careers in finance, banking, and business administration. Recipients participate in mentorship programs connecting them with established professionals. The Municipal Infrastructure Committee adopts vendor evaluation criteria that include diversity and inclusion metrics. This policy influences $4,700,000,000 in public parval partnerships over 2 years, incentivizing better corporate behavior across multiple industries. Marcus Williams completes his criminal justice degree while developing training programs that help security professionals recognize and address bias. His protocols are adopted by 18 major employers and reduce workplace discrimination incidents by 41%. Rebecca Chen's legal framework becomes a template used by civil rights attorneys in 12 states. Her methodical approach increases successful prosecution of workplace bias incidents while encouraging institutional reform over protracted litigation. Community Trust Bank becomes a regional model for redemptive employment practices. Their mentorship program for employees with previous ethical violations influences hiring policies at institutions seeking to balance accountability with opportunities for growth. Rick's transformation from discriminatory bank manager to community advocate illustrates the potential for individual change when accountability is coupled with opportunity for redemption. His quarterly meetings with James continue, focusing on professional development and community impact. "Mr. Patterson," Rick reports during their 8th quarterly meeting, "we've approved $2,300,000, 0 cents, in small business loans this year, with 67% going to minority-owned enterprises. Every application receives the same careful consideration and respectful treatment." James reviews Rick's performance metrics with satisfaction. The numbers represent more than loan approvals. They demonstrate how individual growth can create economic opportunity for entire communities. The Regional Minority Business Development Fund celebrates its 3rd anniversary, having launched 127 new businesses. These companies created 891 jobs and generated $147 million, 0 cents, in economic activity throughout communities that previously struggled to access capital. James publishes a Harvard Business Review article titled "The Economics of Dignity," which analyzes the measurable benefits of treating all customers with respect. The article generates 187,000 downloads and influences corporate diversity policies at Fortune 500 companies nationwide. First National Bank's transformation results in their recognition as Regional Employer of the Year for diversity and inclusion practices. Employee satisfaction scores improve by 39%. Customer retention increases by 22%. And their market share grows as competitors struggle with discrimination scandals. The story spreads through professional networks nationwide, inspiring similar accountability measures in healthcare systems, educational institutions, and government agencies. James receives speaking requests from organizations representing every major industry. At Patterson Industries' annual leadership conference, James addresses 300 employees about the ongoing impact of choosing dignity over revenge when facing personal attack. 2 years ago, someone assumed I was nobody based on my appearance. Today, that incident has created opportunities for thousands of people and changed how an entire industry treats customers. Michael reflects on his father's approach. "Dad, you could have destroyed Rick Morrison's career permanently and moved on. Instead, you created a movement that's still growing. What made you choose the harder path?" James considers the question while looking at Patterson Industries' employee parking lot, where cars representing every economic level reflect the diversity of opportunity he's tried to create. "Son, revenge feels good for a moment, but doesn't build anything lasting. Justice requires patience, planning, and the wisdom to know that changing systems matters more than punishing individuals." Where are you watching from? Share a time when you chose building over destroying, dignity over revenge. Your story might inspire someone else to choose the harder but better path. The final shot shows Patterson Industries' complete campus. 2,000 employees representing the economic diversity and community impact that began with one man's decision to respond to humiliation with strategic change rather than immediate retaliation. The buildings represent more than business success. They embody the principle that dignity maintained under pressure creates opportunities for everyone. Everyone's dignity is not something others give you. It's something you maintain regardless of how others treat you. And the greatest justice comes not from punishment, but from creating a world where such treatment becomes impossible.